Some men inherit power. Others inherit poison. Adrian Blackthorne inherited both, and the moment Eveline Hart stepped into his crumbling castle library on a January night, he knew one of them would finally kill him. This is not a fairy tale about rescued maidens or redeemed nobles. This is about what happens when two people carrying impossible weight meet in the darkest corner of England's frozen north, where bloodlines mean everything and truth means death. Stay with me until the final word, because what begins as a duke's forbidden fascination will end with a kingdom on fire. Geg. The northern wind screamed against Blackthorne Castle like something dying. Adrian stood at his study window, watching snow bury the courtyard paths, his reflection pale against the black glass. 28 years old, duke of the largest estate in England's north, unmarried despite a parade of suitable women his mother dragged through these halls every season, and so goddamn tired he could barely remember what it felt like to sleep without nightmares. His father had died 3 months ago. Heart attack, the doctor said. Adrian knew better. You didn't survive 40 years of ruthless politics and backroom deals with clean hands or a clean heart. The old duke had simply run out of enemies to crush and turned that violence inward until his body quit. Now Adrian wore the title like a noose. He turned from the window as his steward knocked. "Come in." Mr. Graves entered, thin and gray as smoke. "Your mother has arrived, Your Grace, with Lady Celestine Whitmore and her parents. They're in the drawing room expecting you for tea." "Of course they are." Adrian didn't move. His mother never traveled in winter unless she smelled blood in the water. The fact that she'd brought the Whitmores meant she was already planning his wedding. "Tell them I'll be down in 20 minutes. Graves hesitated. "Your Grace," Lady Blackthorne was quite insistent. 20 minutes, Graves. Or don't tell them anything. See if I care." The steward withdrew. Adrian poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and drank it standing. The burn helped. Not enough, but it helped. His study was the only room in this massive stone prison he could tolerate. Books lined 3 walls, floor to ceiling. Philosophy, history, military strategy. His father had never read a single one, called them useless decoration. Adrian had devoured them all by 16, searching for some answer to why power seemed to corrupt everyone who touched it. He still hadn't found one. The castle itself was a monument to wealth and indifference. 43 rooms, half of them unused. Portraits of dead Blackthorns glaring from every hallway. Servants who moved like ghosts because his father had beaten the personality out of them over decades. Adrian had tried changing things when he inherited. Better wages, proper heat in the servants' quarters, an end to the arbitrary cruelty. But you couldn't undo 40 years of fear in 3 months. Most of the staff still flinched when he entered a room. He descended the main staircase slowly, each step deliberate. The drawing room voices carried through the heavy doors before Graves could announce him. His mother's sharp soprano, Lady Whitmore's practiced laugh. And beneath it, his mother's real voice when she thought no one important was listening, calculating, cold, absolutely certain of her control. Adrian pushed the doors open without knocking. "Darling." His mother rose from her chair like a queen granting audience. She was 53 but looked 40, maintained through sheer willpower and expensive cruelty. She'd never shown Adrian affection in his entire life, but she performed maternal devotion beautifully in front of witnesses. "So glad you could join us, Mother." He nodded to the others. "Lord Whitmore, Lady Whitmore, Celestine." Lady Celestine Whitmore was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful. Perfect features, flawless posture, utterly lacking any quality that might suggest an interior life. She smiled at him with practiced warmth. "Your Grace," she said, "such a pleasure to see you again." "The pleasure is mine," Adrian lied. He sat across from them, watched his mother pour tea with hands that had never trembled. She'd buried his father without shedding a tear. Adrian suspected she'd been planning the funeral for 20 years. "We were just discussing the spring season," his mother said. "Celestine will be presented at court, of course. I thought perhaps you might escort her to the opening ball." There it was. The trap laid out plainly because his mother knew he had no choice but to walk into it. "I'm sure Lady Celestine will have many more suitable escorts," Adrian said. "Nonsense." Lord Whitmore leaned forward, brandy already staining his breath, though it was barely 4 in the afternoon. A duke's endorsement would be invaluable for her debut. What Lord Whitmore meant: a connection to the Blackthorne name and fortune would secure his family's position for another generation. What his mother meant: You will marry this girl, or I will make your life unbearable. Adrian looked at Celestine. She met his eyes with the vacant pleasantness of someone who'd been trained since birth to have no opinions of her own. I'll consider it, he said. His mother's smile sharpened. Wonderful. Now, I wanted to discuss the household staff. I've noticed you've made several changes since your father passed. She said the word like it tasted bad. Increased wages, reduced working hours. I think it's time we return to more traditional management. The staff will remain as they are. Adrian, darling, you're being sentimental. Servants require firm guidance. Your father understood that. My father understood cruelty, Adrian said quietly. I don't intend to follow his example. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Lady Whitmore suddenly became fascinated by her teacup. Lord Whitmore cleared his throat. Even Celestine's painted smile faltered. His mother's eyes went flat and hard. We'll discuss this later. No, Adrian said. We won't. He stood. If you'll excuse me, I have estate business to attend to. He left before his mother could respond, her fury following him like smoke. He'd pay for that later. She'd find some way to punish him. She always did. But right now he didn't care. Graves caught him in the corridor. Your Grace, shall I prepare rooms for Lady Blackthorne and her guests? Yes. Adrian rubbed his face. Put my mother in the East Wing, as far from my quarters as architecturally possible. Very good, Your Grace. Adrian spent the rest of the evening locked in his study, reviewing estate documents he'd been avoiding for weeks. Tenant contracts, property disputes, investment portfolios. The machinery of wealth that ran on autopilot, whether he paid attention or not. His father had loved this part. The accumulation, the leverage, the small cruelties disguised as business decisions. Adrian found it suffocating. By midnight, his eyes burned and the words on the page blurred into meaningless shapes. He pushed back from his desk, considered more whiskey, decided against it. His father had solved every problem with alcohol and violence. Adrian refused to become that. He walked the castle halls instead. At night, Blackthorne showed its true face. Shadows pooled in corners no lamp could reach. The wind found gaps in the ancient stone and howled through them like voices. Portraits of his ancestors watched him pass with the same contempt they'd shown in life. This place had been built to intimidate, to remind everyone who entered that the Blackthorns were power made stone and mortar. Adrian hated every inch of it. He found himself in the abandoned East Wing without planning to. This section hadn't been used in decades. His father had closed it off years ago, said maintaining it was wasteful. Dust coated everything. Furniture stood shrouded in white cloth like corpses. But there was one room here Adrian had always been drawn to, the old library. It was smaller than the main library, tucked into a corner tower with windows overlooking the frozen gardens. Someone had loved this room once. You could tell by the way the shelves had been built to catch the morning light, the way the reading chairs were positioned for maximum comfort, but that someone had died or disappeared long ago, and now the books moldered in the dark, forgotten. Adrian pushed open the heavy door and stopped. There was a lamp burning inside. He moved quietly, years of navigating his father's temper, teaching him how to be silent. The lamplight came from the far corner, where someone had pulled several volumes from the shelves and stacked them on a reading table. A figure knelt on the floor, carefully cleaning leather bindings with a soft cloth. A woman. A servant, judging by her plain gray dress and the fact that she was working alone at midnight. She hadn't heard him enter. Adrian watched her work, methodical, gentle, utterly absorbed in the task. She handled each book like it mattered, like these forgotten things deserved care. Something in his chest tightened. He must have made a sound because she looked up suddenly, eyes wide with fear. The lamp threw shadows across her face, high cheekbones, dark hair pinned severely back, features too refined for her station. She dropped the cloth and scrambled to her feet. Your Grace, I'm so sorry. I wasn't. It's all right, Adrian said quickly. You're not in trouble. She didn't believe him. He could see it in the way she pressed back against the shelves, hands clasped to stop them shaking. Of course she didn't believe him. In this house, servants were always in trouble. What's your name? He asked. Evelyn, Your Grace, Evelyn Hart. What are you doing here, Evelyn? She swallowed hard. I know I shouldn't be in this wing, Your Grace. The steward said these rooms were closed, but I found the library by accident last week and the books were in such terrible condition, I thought. I just wanted to help restore them. She looked at the floor. It won't happen again. Adrian stepped closer. She flinched but held her ground. He could see her pulse hammering in her throat. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. 6 months, Your Grace." 6 months, and he'd never noticed her. But then there were dozens of servants in the castle, and his father had insisted they remain invisible. Adrian had been too consumed with his own survival to pay attention. "The books," he said. "You're restoring them?" "Yes, Your Grace." She gestured at the stack on the table. "These are histories of the Northern Territories. 17th century. The bindings are damaged, but the pages are intact. With proper treatment, they could be preserved. You know about book restoration?" Something shifted in her eyes, a flash of something like pain before the blank servitude returned. "I used to, Your Grace. Before I came here. Before." Adrian heard the weight in that single word. The whole life that had existed before this castle, before whatever circumstances had forced her into service. "You can continue," he said. "The library. Restore what you can. I'll tell Graves to give you official access." Eveline stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "Your Grace, these books have been abandoned long enough." Adrian looked at the shelves, the accumulated neglect of decades. Someone should care for them. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "Why would you—" "Because they deserve better than this." He met her eyes. "And so do you." She looked away first, color rising in her pale cheeks. "Thank you, Your Grace." Her voice was barely audible. Adrian left before he could say something he'd regret. Before he could ask why a servant knew about 17th century histories and spoke with the careful diction of someone educated far beyond her station. Before he could ask about the sadness he'd seen in her eyes, the kind of sadness that came from loss so profound it hollowed you out from inside. He returned to his study and poured that whiskey after all. The next morning, his mother cornered him at breakfast. "I've invited the Whitmores to stay through the weekend," she announced. "You will escort Celestine to the village fair tomorrow. It will be good for your reputation to be seen with an appropriate young woman." Adrian didn't look up from his newspaper. "I'm not a performing dog, Mother." "No, you're a duke." Her voice could cut glass. "Which means everything you do reflects on this family. Your recent eccentricities have not gone unnoticed. People are talking. Let them talk." She set down her teacup with deliberate precision. "Your father built this family's position through careful alliances and strategic marriages. You will not destroy his legacy because you've developed some misguided sense of conscience. Father's legacy," Adrian said carefully, "was fear and exploitation. If it's destroyed, good." His mother's expression went arctic. "You're being childish. I'm being honest. Honesty is a luxury we cannot afford." She leaned forward. "You will marry Celestine Whitmore. You will restore this family's reputation, and you will stop this ridiculous reformation of the household staff. Do you understand?" "No." His mother stood abruptly, chair scraping stone. "This conversation isn't over." "Yes," Adrian said, "it is." She left in a rustle of expensive silk, fury radiating from every line of her rigid spine. Adrian returned to his newspaper without reading a single word. That afternoon, he found himself walking back to the old library. He told himself it was to check on the restoration progress. He told himself it had nothing to do with Eveline Hart. He was lying. She was there, working in the thin winter light from the tower windows. She'd cleared an entire shelf and organized the books by subject and condition. She looked up when he entered, surprise flickering across her face. "Your Grace?" She started to curtsy, but he waved it off. "How is the work progressing?" "Slowly." She gestured at the shelves. "Many of these volumes haven't been opened in 50 years. The damage is extensive." Adrian picked up one of the restored books, a military history, the leather binding cleaned and oiled until it gleamed. "You do excellent work." "Thank you, Your Grace." He set the book down carefully. "Where did you learn this?" Eveline's hand stilled on the volume she'd been cleaning. "A long time ago, Your Grace. In a different life." She wasn't going to elaborate. Adrian could respect that. God knew he had enough secrets of his own. He stayed anyway. Over the next hour, she showed him her process. The gentle cleaning, the careful repairs, the painstaking cataloging. She spoke about the books with genuine passion, the servile mask slipping to reveal someone educated, intelligent, and utterly absorbed in work that mattered to her. Adrian found himself watching her more than the books. The way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear when she concentrated. The way her fingers moved with unconscious grace. The way she spoke about preserving history like it was sacred. "This one," she said, pulling down a slim volume, "is particularly interesting. It's a journal from one of the earlier dukes. He traveled extensively through Europe before the title confined him to England." "My great-great-grandfather," Adrian said, reading the name embossed on the cover. "I didn't know he kept journals. There are 3 more in the collection." Eveline's voice softened. "He wrote about art, philosophy, the people he met. He seemed different from what I'd expect from someone in his position." "You mean he seemed human?" She glanced at him, something unreadable in her dark eyes. "Yes, Your Grace." They both heard the implication. The current Blackthorns were not particularly human. Adrian should have left, should have maintained the proper distance between Duke and servant. Instead, he pulled up one of the old reading chairs and asked her about the restoration techniques she'd learned. She answered hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence as she realized he actually wanted to know. The afternoon slipped away. Outside the tower windows, snow began to fall again. When the light finally failed and Evelyn had to stop work, Adrian felt a sharp disappointment. He'd forgotten himself for 2 hours, forgotten the title, the expectations, the trap his life had become. He'd just been a man talking to a woman about books in a library, and it had been the most peaceful afternoon he'd experienced in months. "Tomorrow?" he asked as she gathered her supplies. She paused. "Your Grace, I'll come by tomorrow. If you don't mind the interruption." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. "You're the Duke, Your Grace. You're not an interruption." But she smiled slightly as she said it, and Adrian's chest did something complicated. After she left, he sat alone in the library as darkness filled the tower. This was dangerous. He knew it was dangerous. His mother was already arranging his marriage. The servants gossiped. Every move a duke made was watched, analyzed, weaponized. But when had Adrian Blackthorn ever chosen the safe path? He returned the next day, and the day after that, and the one after that. Each afternoon he found Evelyn in the library, slowly bringing it back to life. They talked while she worked, about books, about history, about nothing in particular. She never asked about his life, and he never volunteered information. It created a strange intimacy, this unspoken agreement to exist outside the roles that defined them everywhere else. He learned small things. She was 24. She'd been educated somewhere before coming to Blackthorn, though she wouldn't say where. She read Latin and French fluently. She had opinions on everything from philosophy to politics that she tried desperately to hide until Adrian coaxed them out. She was extraordinary, and she was absolutely terrified of him knowing it. On the 5th day, he brought her a book from his personal collection, a rare treatise on medieval binding techniques. "I thought this might help," he said. Evelyn took it carefully, reverence in her touch. "Your Grace, I can't. This is too valuable. I'm lending it, not giving it." Adrian sat in his usual chair. "Besides, it's useless sitting in my study when someone here actually understands it." She traced the embossed cover with one finger. "Thank you." The way she said it made his throat tight. That evening, Graves found him in the library instead of at dinner. "Your Grace, Lady Blackthorn is requesting your presence. Tell her I'm occupied. She's quite insistent, Your Grace. Then she can be insistent in her own rooms. I'm not coming." Graves looked pained. "Your Grace, forgive me, but the entire household is aware of your visits to this wing. Lady Blackthorn is making inquiries." Of course she was. His mother always knew where the knife would cut deepest. "Let her inquire," Adrian said. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Not yet," Graves said quietly, and left. Adrian stayed in the library long after Evelyn had gone, surrounded by restored books and gathering storm clouds. The explosion came 3 days later. Adrian was in the study reviewing tenant contracts when his mother swept in without knocking. Celestine and both Whitmores trailed behind her like an invading army. His mother's face was Arctic triumph. "We need to discuss your behavior," she said. Adrian set down his pen. "Then discuss it. You've been spending hours alone with a servant girl." His mother said it like an accusation of murder. "In an abandoned wing of the castle. Do you have any idea how that looks? I've been supervising library restoration." Adrian kept his voice level. "There's nothing scandalous about it. You've been compromising your position. She moved closer, eyes glittering. Servants are talking. The household is in chaos. And now the Whitmores have heard rumors that threaten to end the engagement we've been carefully cultivating. Lady Whitmore spoke up, voice trembling with performed outrage. We cannot have our daughter associated with a family embroiled in scandal, Your Grace. What scandal? Adrian stood. I've done nothing but support educational preservation. You've been meeting privately with a woman beneath your station, Lord Whitmore growled. Repeatedly, deliberately. It's inappropriate at best and criminal at worst. Criminal? Adrian laughed without humor. Talking about books is criminal now? Don't play naive. His mother's voice cracked like a whip. You know exactly what this looks like. A duke showing special attention to a servant, giving her gifts, spending hours alone with her. If you were any other man, it would be called what it is, seduction. The word hung in the air like poison. I haven't touched her, Adrian said quietly. I haven't said anything inappropriate. I've treated her with basic human respect, which apparently is so foreign to this family that everyone assumes it must be something sinister. You've made her a target. His mother's voice went soft and deadly. The other servants hate her now. They call her the Duke's whore behind her back. Did you think about that when you were being so respectfully inappropriate? Adrian's blood went cold. That's not, It doesn't matter what it is. His mother leaned on his desk. Perception is reality. And right now you've made that girl into a scandal. The only way to repair this is to dismiss her immediately and announce your engagement to Celestine. No. Adrian, I said no. He met his mother's eyes. I won't sacrifice an innocent woman because you've decided to weaponize gossip. Then you're a fool, his mother said, because that innocent woman is going to be destroyed whether you dismiss her or not. At least this way you save yourself. Adrian looked at Celestine, standing silent and perfect and completely empty. Looked at her parents, calculating how to profit from his humiliation. Looked at his mother, who had never loved him for a single moment of his miserable life. Get out, he said. His mother smiled coldly. Think carefully, Adrian. This is your last chance to do the right thing. I am doing the right thing. Adrian's voice was steel. I'm telling you to get out of my study before I have you removed. The Whitmores backed toward the door, scandalized whispers already forming. His mother held his gaze for one more moment, then turned and walked out with queenly dignity. Adrian sat down heavily after they left. His hands were shaking. He'd just declared war on his own family. That night, he went to the servants' quarters. He'd never been to this part of the castle. His father had forbidden it, said it was beneath a duke's dignity. The corridors were narrow and cold despite his orders to improve heating. The rooms barely large enough for a bed. He found Evelyn's room by asking one of the kitchen maids, who looked at him with pure terror. The door was unlocked. Evelyn sat on her narrow bed, still dressed, staring at nothing. She looked up when he entered and her face crumbled. Your Grace, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never meant... Stop. Adrian closed the door. None of this is your fault, but the rumors are cruel lies told by cruel people. He wanted to go to her, to offer comfort, but the space between them felt like an ocean. Evelyn, I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. She shook her head. You were kind to me. That's not something to apologize for. My kindness made you a target. Your kindness, she said softly, was the first thing anyone has shown me in 6 months that felt human. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they couldn't say. I'm leaving, Evelyn said finally. Tomorrow. Before this gets worse. No, Adrian said immediately. Your Grace, I won't let them drive you out. He stepped closer. I won't give them that victory. She stood, eyes bright with unshed tears. You don't understand. If I stay, they'll destroy both of us. Your mother will make sure of it. Let her try. You're a duke. Evelyn's voice broke. You can survive scandal. I can't. I'm nobody, less than nobody. If I stay, I become the reason you fall, and I won't be that. Adrian saw it then. The weight she carried, the shame she'd been taught to feel for existing. The belief that she deserved nothing because she'd been born to nothing. You're not nobody, he said fiercely. You're brilliant and educated, and you've survived something terrible, haven't you? Something that put you in this castle wearing those clothes when you should be... He stopped. He was saying too much. revealing that he'd seen through her disguise. Evelyn looked at him with an expression so raw it hurt. "You don't know anything about me. Then tell me." "I can't." "Why?" "Because," she whispered, "some secrets are better left buried." She moved to the door, opened it. "You should go, Your Grace, before someone sees you here and makes this even worse." Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, to promise protection he wasn't sure he could deliver, but he saw the exhaustion in her face and knew she was right. He left, but at the doorway he turned back. "The library," he said. "Tomorrow afternoon. Will you be there?" Evelyn met his eyes. She shouldn't. They both knew she shouldn't. "Yes," she said, "I'll be there." Adrian walked back through the cold castle halls, feeling something dangerous taking root in his chest. This was more than attraction, more than sympathy. This was recognition, the soul-deep understanding that he'd found someone who mattered in a world that had long since stopped mattering to him, and that meant everything was about to burn. The morning came cold and merciless. Adrian woke before dawn with the certainty that everything was about to get worse. His mother had the patience of a serpent and twice the venom. She would strike when he was most vulnerable, and she would make it look justified. He dressed in the dark and went to the library before breakfast. Evelyn was already there, working by lamplight. She looked up when he entered, and something passed between them, acknowledgement that they were both choosing this, knowing full well what it would cost. "You came," she said. "I said I would." She turned back to the books, but her hands trembled slightly. Adrian saw the exhaustion in the set of her shoulders. She hadn't slept either. He pulled a chair close to where she worked. Closer than necessary. Close enough that he could smell the faint lavender soap she used, could see the dark circles under her eyes. "Tell me something," he said. "Something true." Evelyn's fingers stilled on the book spine. "Why?" "Because I'm tired of lies. Tired of performance." He leaned forward. "Everyone in my life wants something from me. Title, money, power. You're the only person who doesn't seem to want anything." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw centuries of sadness in her eyes. "That's because I already lost everything, Your Grace." She said it simply, like stating a fact about the weather. "There's nothing left to want." "What did you lose?" "Everything that mattered." She went back to her work, closing the door he'd tried to open. "And I can't talk about it, not to you, not to anyone." Adrian wanted to push, wanted to demand answers, but he understood survival, and he understood that some wounds were too deep to expose to daylight. They worked in silence for an hour. Adrian pretending to read while watching her restore a water-damaged manuscript with infinite care. The intimacy of it struck him, this quiet companionship that asked nothing and offered everything. Then Graves appeared in the doorway, face pale. "Your Grace, you're needed in the main hall." Immediately. Adrian stood. "What's happened? Lady Blackthorne has summoned the entire household staff. She's making an announcement." Cold dread settled in Adrian's stomach. He looked at Evelyn, saw the same fear reflected in her face. "Stay here," he told her. "Your Grace, please." He touched her shoulder, brief and desperate. "Just stay here." He followed Graves to the main hall where the castle's 47 servants stood in rigid lines. His mother waited on the grand staircase like a queen addressing peasants. Celestine and her parents flanked her. The Whitmores looked satisfied in that particular way of people about to witness justified cruelty. Adrian's mother smiled when she saw him. "How kind of you to join us, darling." She projected her voice to fill the cavernous space. "I've called everyone here to address a matter of household discipline that has been neglected far too long." Adrian moved to stand at the base of the stairs, positioning himself between his mother and the servants. "Whatever you have to say, Mother, say it to me privately. This concerns everyone." She gestured to the assembled staff. "It has come to my attention that certain individuals have been overstepping their positions, taking liberties, forgetting their place." She let the words hang. Several servants shifted uncomfortably. One maid in particular has been seen spending inappropriate amounts of time alone with my son. She paused for effect, in abandoned wings of the castle, behind closed doors, accepting gifts. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Adrian's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. "This behavior is unacceptable," his mother continued. "It creates discord among the staff. It damages the reputation of this household. and it shows profound disrespect for the natural order that has governed these estates for centuries. "Where is Evelyn Hart?" she asked. "She's not here," Adrian said immediately. "Then fetch her." His mother's voice cracked like a whip. She should answer for her behavior in front of those she has scandalized. "No," Adrian said. His mother's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Adrian climbed 3 steps, bringing himself closer to her level. "You want to humiliate someone. Humiliate me. Leave her out of it. How noble." His mother's smile was poison. "But she's already in it, darling. The moment you decided to treat a servant like your equal, you put her in it." She turned back to the assembled staff. "Let this be clear to everyone. There is a natural hierarchy in this world. Nobles and servants. Those who command and those who obey. When that hierarchy is violated, everyone suffers." Lady Whitmore spoke up, voice dripping with false concern. "We've heard reports that this girl has been unsuitable. Wearing faded dresses that offend the eye. Speaking above her station, generally conducting herself in a way that suggests she thinks herself better than she is." Several of the older servants nodded. Adrian saw it clearly now. His mother had been working them, turning them against Evelyn with carefully planted rumors and insinuations. "I move that she be dismissed immediately," Lord Whitmore announced, "for the good of the household." "Agreed," his mother said. "Graves, prepare her severance. She's to be gone by nightfall." The finality in her voice sent ice through Adrian's veins. "You can't do this," he said. "I can, and I am." His mother descended 1 step. "I am mistress of this household in your father's absence. Staff discipline falls under my purview. Unless you'd like to override me publicly, make this an even bigger scandal." She had him trapped. If he fought her openly, it proved everything she'd been insinuating, that his relationship with Evelyn was inappropriate enough to warrant destroying his mother's authority. If he didn't fight, Evelyn was gone. Adrian looked at the servants, saw their blank faces, their careful neutrality. None of them would defend Evelyn. She was an outsider, and outsiders were always sacrificial. Evelyn appeared at the back of the hall. She must have heard the commotion. She stood in the doorway in her faded gray dress, chin raised despite the terror Adrian could see in her white-knuckled hands. "I'm here," she said quietly. The hall went silent. His mother's smile widened. "How brave of you to show yourself. Come forward." Evelyn walked through the parted crowd like approaching an execution. She stopped at the base of the stairs and curtsied with mechanical precision. "Your Grace?" Her voice was steady. "You wish to see me. I wish to dismiss you." His mother's voice was silken cruelty. "You've been unsuitable for service here. Your behavior has been inappropriate. Your presence creates discord. You will leave by sunset." Evelyn didn't flinch. She met his mother's eyes with something that looked almost like defiance. "May I know what inappropriate behavior I'm accused of, Your Grace? Playing innocent won't save you, girl." "I'm not playing anything." Evelyn's voice was quiet steel. "I've fulfilled my duties. I've kept to my quarters, except when working. If my presence offends, I apologize. But I won't accept accusations without knowing what I'm accused of." Adrian's mother descended another step, voice dropping to something dangerous. "You've been meeting privately with my son, accepting his attention, acting as though you have any right to a duke's time or interest." "He came to the library to supervise restoration work," Evelyn said. "I didn't seek his attention. I didn't encourage anything inappropriate." "But you didn't discourage it either, did you?" His mother's voice was a scalpel. "You enjoyed it. The special treatment, the gifts, having a duke notice you when you're nothing and no one." Evelyn's composure cracked just slightly. "I know what I am, Your Grace." "Do you? Because from where I stand you seem to have forgotten." His mother gestured to the assembled servants. "Look at them. They know their place. They don't presume. They don't create scandals. They serve quietly and gratefully, as they should." She turned back to Evelyn. "You, on the other hand, have disrupted my household. You've made my son the subject of gossip. You've overstepped so egregiously that I have no choice but to remove you." "Then remove me," Evelyn said. "But don't pretend this is about my behavior. This is about control. About making sure everyone knows you still have it." The hall gasped collectively. "You didn't speak to a duchess that way. You didn't challenge her authority in front of witnesses? Adrian's mother went very still. The temperature in the room dropped. How dare you, she said softly. I dare because I have nothing left to lose. Evelyn's voice strengthened. You've already decided I'm gone, so I'll speak truth before I go. You're not angry because I've been inappropriate. You're angry because your son showed kindness to someone you consider beneath him, because kindness threatens the fear you use to maintain power. Adrian moved without thinking, positioning himself between Evelyn and his mother. That's enough. She's right. His mother's eyes glittered. She has nothing to lose. So let's give her what she deserves. She nodded to Lord Whitmore, who produced a folded paper from his coat pocket. We've made inquiries, his mother said, about your past, about where you came from before you appeared at my doorstep 6 months ago. Evelyn went rigid. Adrian felt her terror like a physical thing. It seems you have no employment history, his mother continued. No references, no traceable background at all. You simply appeared out of nowhere, which is fascinating. What are you running from, girl? Nothing, Evelyn whispered. Liar. His mother descended to her level. You're hiding something significant enough that you'd rather scrub floors than risk anyone knowing who you really are. She held up the paper. We haven't found it yet, but we will. And when we do, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of creature my son has been wasting his time protecting. Adrian grabbed his mother's wrist. Enough! She pulled free, eyes blazing. You choose this? A lying servant over your own family? I choose basic human decency, Adrian said, something this family has never understood. His mother laughed, sharp and cruel. Human decency. How noble. How profoundly stupid. She turned to the servants. This is what happens when hierarchy breaks down. When dukes forget they're not supposed to care about the feelings of the people beneath them. She moved to leave, then paused. Oh, and Miss Hart? One more thing. Her smile was a knife. Leave the silver necklace you've been wearing in your room when you go. I know you didn't come here with anything of value, so wherever you got it, it doesn't belong to you. Evelyn's hand flew to her throat, where a thin chain disappeared beneath her dress collar. For the first time, real panic showed in her face. That's mine, she said. Prove it. It was my mother's. Then your mother stole it. His mother's voice was final. Because that necklace bears a crest I recognize. One that has no business being around the neck of a servant. She swept from the hall, the Whitmores trailing behind her like jackals. The servants dispersed quickly, eyes averted. Within moments, only Adrian and Evelyn remained, standing in the vast empty space. Evelyn was shaking. Adrian reached for her, but she stepped back. Don't. Her voice was raw. Please don't. Evelyn, I need to pack. She turned away. I'll be gone before sunset. You don't have to go. Yes, I do. She looked at him over her shoulder, eyes bright with tears she refused to shed. Your mother knows there's something wrong with my background. She'll keep digging until she finds it. And when she does, it won't just destroy me. It will destroy you too. What are you talking about? She shook her head. I can't tell you. I wish I could, but I can't. The words came out broken. Just let me go, Your Grace. It's better this way. Nothing about this is better. You'll understand someday. She walked toward the door, each step deliberate. Maybe you'll even forgive me. Adrian watched her disappear into the castle's shadows. Every instinct screamed at him to follow, to demand answers, to protect her from whatever threat had her so terrified. But he'd learned long ago that some people couldn't be saved from their own secrets. He found Graves in the study an hour later. I want everything we have on Evelyn Hart's background, Adrian said. Employment records, references, how she came to work here. Graves shifted uncomfortably. Your Grace, your mother specifically requested... I'm not asking my mother, I'm asking you. The steward hesitated, then pulled a thin folder from the cabinet. This is all we have. Adrian opened it. 1 page. Hired 6 months ago through an employment agency. No prior positions listed, no family references, no address before arriving at the castle. It was nothing, less than nothing. Who hired her? Adrian asked. The agency, Your Grace. They vouched for her character. Which agency? Graves consulted the paper. Monroe and Associates, London. Send them a letter. I want complete background information. Where she came from, who her family was, everything. Your Grace, if your mother discovers, then make sure she doesn't discover it. Adrian met his steward's eyes. This is not a request. Graves bowed stiffly. As you wish, Your Grace. Adrian spent the rest of the day avoiding his mother and trying to work. He couldn't concentrate. Kept thinking about Evelyn's face when his mother mentioned the necklace. The raw panic there. What was she hiding? He went to her room just before sunset, knocked on the thin door. No answer. He opened it anyway. The room was empty. The narrow bed stripped. The small trunk she'd arrived with gone. The room looked like no one had ever lived there at all, except on the nightstand sat a silver necklace. Adrian picked it up carefully. The chain was delicate, expensive. The pendant was a small crest, a rose intertwined with a crown. He'd seen it before. Somewhere in the castle archives, in one of the old portraits. He couldn't remember which one. He pocketed the necklace and went hunting through the castle's portrait gallery. Searched through 3 generations of Blackthorn ancestors before he found what he was looking for. Not a Blackthorn portrait. A guest portrait from 50 years ago. A young woman in court dress, beautiful and regal. The placard beneath read Princess Rosalind Evermont, visiting from the royal household. She wore the exact same crest around her neck. Adrian's blood went cold. He ran to the library, pulled down the genealogy texts he'd seen Evelyn restoring. Found the entry for Princess Rosalind, born 1798, married Duke Francis Evermont, 1816. One daughter, birth date unclear. Died 1820 under mysterious circumstances. The daughter's name had been crossed out. Someone had deliberately erased it from the record. Adrian checked 3 more sources. Same thing. Every reference to Princess Rosalind's child had been methodically removed from official records. But the conspiracy section of one obscure history mentioned rumors. Whispers that the princess had been murdered for political reasons, that her infant daughter had disappeared the same night, that certain noble families had been involved in covering it up. Adrian's hand shook as he turned pages. One of those noble families was Blackthorn. He sat in the dark library as the pieces assembled themselves into something impossible. Evelyn wasn't a servant. She was the lost heir to a murdered princess. The child who'd vanished 30 years ago had survived, been hidden, raised in obscurity, and his family had been part of the conspiracy that tried to kill her. No wonder she was terrified. No wonder she'd rather scrub floors than risk anyone discovering who she was. If the families involved in the original conspiracy knew she still lived, they'd finish what they started. Adrian's mother knew something was wrong with Evelyn's background. She was already investigating. It was only a matter of time before she found the truth. And when she did, Evelyn would die. Adrian ran from the castle without coat or hat. The snow was falling heavily now, coating the grounds in white silence. He made it to the main road just in time to see a hired coach disappearing into the storm. Stop! He ran after it, but the driver didn't hear or didn't care. The coach vanished into the swirling snow. Adrian stood in the middle of the frozen road, watching the only woman who'd ever mattered to him disappear into the winter night. She was out there somewhere, alone, hunted by people who'd already killed once to keep their secrets safe, and he'd let her go. He walked back to the castle through the storm. His mother stood in the entrance hall, dry and warm, watching him drip melted snow onto marble floors. "I hope you're satisfied," she said. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and saw his father's cruelty reflected back. This woman had orchestrated everything: the humiliation, the dismissal, the calculated destruction of anything that threatened her control. "Who is she?" he asked. The real question beneath, "What did you do 30 years ago?" His mother's expression flickered. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "The necklace," Adrian said. "You recognize the crest. That's why you wanted it. It's a trinket." His mother's voice was careful. "Nothing more." "It belonged to Princess Rosalind Evermont," Adrian said quietly. "And you know exactly what that means." His mother went very still. Then she smiled, cold and terrible. "You've been reading too much history, darling. It's made you paranoid." She turned to leave. "I'm going after her," Adrian said. His mother stopped. "No, you're not. Watch me." "If you leave this castle to chase that girl," his mother said, without turning around, "you will return to find yourself disinherited. I'll have you declared mentally unfit. I'll give the title to your cousin. I'll burn your legacy to ash before I let you throw it away on a servant." "Then burn it," Adrian said. "I don't care anymore." His mother turned, eyes blazing. "You're a fool." "Probably." Adrian met her stare. "But I'd rather be a fool than whatever you are." He walked past her, taking the stairs two at a time to his study. Started pulling documents from drawers, deeds, bank drafts, anything portable and valuable. He'd need money, resources. He had no idea where Evelyn had gone, but he'd find her. He had to. Graves appeared in the doorway. "Your Grace, what are you doing?" "Leaving." Adrian stuffed papers into a leather bag. "Tell the stable master to prepare my fastest horse." "Your Grace, this is madness." "Then I'm mad." Adrian grabbed his coat. "Get the horse ready. Now." Graves fled. Adrian was halfway out the door when his mother's voice stopped him cold. "There were 5 families involved in Rosalind's death," she said from the shadows. 5 noble houses who decided her daughter was too dangerous to live. We've kept that secret for 30 years. "We?" Adrian turned slowly. His mother stepped into the lamplight. "The Blackthorns were part of it. Your father gave the order that night. The assassination was his idea. The floor dropped out from under Adrian's world." "Why?" The word came out strangled. "Because Rosalind's child had a stronger claim to the throne than the current line." His mother's voice was clinical. "Because her existence threatened the political stability we'd spent decades building. Because sometimes monsters must do monstrous things to preserve order. You killed a baby." "We tried to." His mother smiled that terrible smile. "Apparently we failed. And now you found her. How inconvenient." Adrian couldn't breathe. His father had been a murderer. His family had built their power on the corpse of a princess and the attempted murder of an infant. Everything he was, everything he had, was soaked in blood. "I'm going to find her," he said. "I'm going to protect her. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did." His mother laughed. "You'll do no such thing, because if you expose us, you expose yourself. The Blackthorn name will be destroyed. Every ally, every business connection, every ounce of power you have will evaporate. You'll be nobody, less than nobody." "Good," Adrian said. His mother's laughter died. "You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more." Adrian picked up his bag. "I've spent my entire life carrying this family's poison. I'm done." He walked out of the study and didn't look back. The stable master had his horse ready, clearly terrified of being caught between Duke and Duchess. Adrian mounted without a word and rode into the storm. Behind him, Blackthorn Castle stood like a monument to everything he was leaving behind. Title, wealth, family, future, all of it built on murder and lies. He dug his heels into his horse's flanks and rode harder. Somewhere out in that frozen darkness was a woman who'd lost everything trying to survive his family's sins. A woman who'd chosen loneliness over the risk of being discovered. A woman who'd looked at him with such sadness because she knew they could never have what they both wanted. Adrian had no plan, no idea where she'd gone or how to find her. No resources except what he'd grabbed, and no allies except his own stubborn refusal to let this end. But he had one thing his father never possessed. He had something worth fighting for. The snow fell harder as he disappeared into the night, leaving behind the only life he'd ever known. There was no going back now. No redemption that didn't require destroying everything, so destruction it would be. Adrian rode through 3 days of winter hell before he found the first trace of her. His horse collapsed from exhaustion outside a coaching inn 20 miles south of the estate. The stable boy recognized the description. A young woman traveling alone, paid in advance for passage to London, left 2 days prior. London. A city of 500,000 souls where someone could disappear forever if they wanted to. Adrian bought a fresh horse with money he couldn't afford to spend and kept riding. His hands were numb. His face felt like frozen meat. He didn't care. Somewhere ahead of him was a woman carrying a death sentence, and he was the only person in England who knew enough to protect her. Except he didn't know enough. Not nearly enough. He reached London on the 4th day, half dead and running on nothing but desperation. The city swallowed him whole, smoke and noise and 10,000 anonymous faces. He started with the coaching stations asking about a young woman traveling alone. Got nowhere. Started checking boarding houses in the cheaper districts. Still nothing. She'd vanished like smoke. On the sixth day, Adrian found himself in a coffee house near Cheapside, staring at cold dregs and trying to think like someone running for her life. Where would she go? Who would she trust? She had no money, no connections, no one who knew her real identity, except someone did know. Someone had hidden her for 30 years. Someone had kept Princess Rosalind's daughter alive and secret. Adrian needed to find that someone. He went to the Royal Archives, spent 2 days bribing clerks and searching through dusty records until he found what he was looking for. A notation in the household accounts from 1820. Payment to a midwife named Margaret Thorne for services rendered to the late Princess Rosalind. Margaret Thorne. The woman who delivered the baby everyone thought was dead. It took another 3 days to track down her current location, a modest house in Southwark, far from the wealthy districts where princesses died and conspiracies were born. Adrian showed up at her door looking like a corpse himself, unshaven and hollow-eyed. The woman who answered was 70 if she was a day, but her eyes were sharp as knives. "I'm looking for someone," Adrian said. "A young woman, 24 years old. She would have been entrusted to your care as an infant." Margaret Thorne's face went carefully blank. "I don't know what you're talking about. Her name is Evelyn Hart." Adrian pulled out the necklace. She was wearing this. The old woman's composure shattered. She grabbed his arm and pulled him inside, slamming the door. "Where did you get that?" Her voice shook. "What have you done to her?" "Nothing. I'm trying to protect her." Adrian met her frightened eyes. "Please, I need to know where she is." Margaret backed away, breathing hard. "You're Blackthorne. I recognize you from the papers. Your family is one of the 5. "I know what my family did," Adrian said quietly. "I know they tried to murder an infant. I know they've been covering it up for 30 years. And I know Evelyn is in danger because my mother has started investigating her background." The old woman sagged into a chair. "Dear God, after all this time, tell me where she is." Margaret shook her head. "I don't know. When I gave her to the couple who raised her, I made them promise to keep her hidden, to never contact me, to burn every bridge that might lead back to her real identity." "Who were they?" Adrian demanded. "The couple who raised her?" "Dead." Margaret's voice cracked. "Both killed in a coaching accident 8 years ago. After that, Evelyn was on her own. I tried to find her, to make sure she was safe, but she disappeared completely. Until she showed up at my estate 6 months ago," Adrian said. Margaret looked at him with sudden understanding. "You care about her?" Adrian didn't answer, didn't need to. The old woman stood slowly. "If she came to London, there's only one place she'd feel safe. The only place I told her about, if she ever needed sanctuary." "Where?" "St. Catherine's Home for Women, in Whitechapel. It's a shelter for women with nowhere else to go." Adrian was out the door before she finished speaking. St. Catherine's was a grim stone building wedged between a tannery and a slaughterhouse. The smell alone was enough to turn your stomach. Adrian pounded on the door until a severe-looking woman in black opened it. "I'm looking for someone," he said. "Evelyn Hart. Is she here?" The woman's eyes narrowed. "And who are you?" "Someone who needs to speak with her. Please. We don't give out information about our residents." The woman started to close the door. Adrian blocked it with his boot. "I'm not leaving until I see her. Then you'll be standing there a long time." The woman shoved harder against the door. "I'm Duke Adrian Blackthorne," he said desperately. "I have information about her safety. Her life is in danger." The woman paused. Then her expression hardened. "All the more reason to keep men like you away from her." She slammed the door in his face. Adrian stood in the filthy street, hands shaking with exhaustion and frustration. He'd ridden himself half to death, abandoned everything he'd ever known, and he couldn't even get through a goddamn door. He went to a boarding house across the street and rented a room with a window facing St. Catherine's. Started watching, waiting. On the second day he saw her. Evelyn emerged from the shelter in the early morning, wrapped in a threadbare shawl. She looked thinner, exhausted. She joined a line of women waiting outside a factory, day laborers looking for work. Adrian's heart cracked open. This was what she'd run to. 12-hour shifts in dangerous conditions for pennies. The kind of desperate poverty that killed people slowly. He waited until she started toward the factory, then intercepted her in the street. "Evelyn." She spun, eyes wide with shock. "Adrian? We need to talk." She looked around frantically like a trapped animal. How did you find me? It doesn't matter. Adrian moved closer. You're not safe. My mother knows there's something wrong with your background. She's investigating. It's only a matter of time before she discovers I should have died 30 years ago? Evelyn's voice was bitter. Before she finishes what your father started? I know who you are, Adrian said quietly. I found the portrait, the records. I know you're Princess Rosalind's daughter. Evelyn's face went white. Then you know why I can't be found. Why I've spent my entire life hiding. That's why I came. To warn you. To help you. You can't help me. She backed away. No one can. The families who wanted me dead are still in power. If they discover I survived, they'll kill me and anyone connected to me. Then we expose them, Adrian said. We go to the current royal family, present the evidence, force them to acknowledge your claim. Evelyn laughed, sharp and broken. You think the crown wants me? I'm an inconvenience, a complication, a reminder of an embarrassing conspiracy they'd rather forget. She shook her head. The moment I reveal myself, I become a target for everyone with something to lose. So you'd rather live like this? Adrian gestured at the factory, the slums, the grinding poverty. Working yourself to death for nothing? I'd rather live, Evelyn said, even if it's like this. She turned to go, but Adrian caught her arm. There has to be another way. There isn't. She pulled free, eyes bright with tears. You need to forget about me, Your Grace. Go back to your castle. Marry your suitable wife. Live the life you were born to live. I left that life, Adrian said. For you. Then you're a fool. Her voice broke. Because I can't give you anything except danger and death. She walked away quickly, disappearing into the crowd of factory workers. Adrian let her go. Partly because he didn't know what else to say. Partly because he was starting to understand that she was right. There was no safe solution, no clean resolution. Either she stayed hidden and lived in poverty forever, or she revealed herself and died. Adrian went back to his rented room and tried to think. There had to be an answer, some way to protect her without destroying her in the process. He was still searching for it 2 days later when someone knocked on his door. He opened it expecting the landlord. Instead found a man in expensive clothes and a cold smile. Duke Blackthorne, the man said. We need to talk. Who are you? Lord Edmund Whitmore, the younger brother of Lord Whitmore who'd been at the castle. Your mother sent me. Adrian's blood went cold. Edmund Whitmore entered without invitation, looking around the shabby room with barely concealed disgust. Quite a step down from Blackthorne Castle. He sat in the room's only chair. But I suppose that's what happens when you chase after servant girls. Get out, Adrian said. In a moment. Edmund crossed his legs. First, I have a message from your mother. She's willing to forgive your little tantrum, welcome you back, restore your position. All you have to do is come home and marry Celestine. No. Edmund smiled. I thought you'd say that. So I have a secondary message. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket and tossed it on the bed. That's a warrant for the arrest of one Evelyn Hart. Charges include theft, fraud, and impersonation. She'll be arrested within the hour and held in Newgate Prison until trial. Adrian grabbed the warrant. This is fabricated. She didn't do any of this. Proof is such a flexible concept, Edmund said, especially when you have enough money and influence. Your mother has both. You can't do this. It's already done. Edmund stood. Unless you come home. Publicly renounce your connection to the girl. Marry Celestine and restore your family's reputation. Then the charges disappear. Adrian's hands shook. You're blackmailing me. We're offering you a choice. Edmund's voice was ice. Your future or hers. Your family's legacy or a servant's freedom. Choose wisely. He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Adrian stared at the warrant, mind racing. This was the trap. The final move in his mother's game. She couldn't control him directly anymore, so she'd found the one thing he cared about and weaponized it. If he refused to come home, Evelyn went to prison. Newgate was a death sentence for women. Disease, violence, conditions so brutal that most didn't survive a year. Even if she lived long enough to stand trial, the fabricated charges would be impossible to disprove. But if he went back, if he married Celestine and restored his position, his mother would use him for the rest of his life. Every decision filtered through her control. every choice a calculation. He'd become exactly what his father had been, powerful and poisoned and utterly empty. There was no good option, no path that didn't require sacrificing something essential. Adrian looked out the window at St. Catherine's, tried to imagine going to Evelyn and telling her what was happening, that his family was about to destroy her unless he surrendered completely. He couldn't do it, couldn't ask her to carry that weight, which meant he had to make the choice alone. He packed his few belongings and left the boarding house, walked through London's filthy streets trying to find an answer that didn't exist. The city churned around him, indifferent to one man's impossible situation. By sunset, he found himself at the Thames, watching black water slide past. His father had drowned a man in this river once. Business dispute. The body was never found. His father had told him the story like it was something to be proud of. Power meant being willing to do terrible things and live with the consequences. Adrian finally understood what his father had meant. He went to the address Edmund Whitmore had left, a gentleman's club in Mayfair, where the conspirators apparently felt safe conducting business. The doorman tried to stop him, but Adrian pushed past, into rooms thick with cigar smoke and quiet wealth. Edmund sat in a private room with 3 other men. All of them looked up when Adrian entered. "I'll do it," Adrian said. "I'll come home. Marry Celestine. Play the dutiful son. Whatever you want." Edmund smiled. "I knew you'd see reason." "On one condition," Adrian continued, "you drop the charges against Evelyn Hart. Completely. No trial, no prison, no further investigation into her background. She disappears and you forget she ever existed." "Done," Edmund said immediately. Too immediately. Adrian's instincts screamed warning. He looked at the other men in the room, older, harder, carrying the weight of decades in power. They watched him with the predatory patience of sharks. One of them spoke. Lord Ashford, gray-haired and aristocratic. "Sit down, Your Grace. We should discuss the terms more thoroughly." Adrian remained standing. "I've stated my terms, and will honor them," Ashford said smoothly. "But first, help us understand. Why does this girl matter so much to you?" "She doesn't," Adrian lied. "I just won't let innocent people be destroyed for political games." "How noble." Another man spoke. "Lord Cunningham, younger but no less dangerous. But we both know there's more to it than that. You've spent considerable time with her, shown her special attention, one might even say affection." Adrian kept his face carefully blank. "I showed basic human decency. Apparently that's so rare in this circle it gets mistaken for affection." Ashford leaned forward. "Here's what concerns us, Your Grace. This girl appeared at your estate 6 months ago with no background, no history, no explanation. Your mother became suspicious and began investigating. And the moment she got close to discovering the truth, you abandoned everything to chase after the girl." He paused, letting the implications hang. "Which suggests," Ashford continued, "that you know exactly who she is, and that you've been protecting her." The room went very quiet. Adrian felt the trap closing. These weren't just Whitmore's associates. These were the other families. The conspirators who'd murdered Princess Rosalind and tried to kill her daughter 30 years ago. They knew, or they suspected, and they'd lured him here to confirm it. "I don't know what you're talking about," Adrian said carefully. "Don't you?" Cunningham smiled. "Because we think you do. We think you discovered this girl's real identity. We think that's why you're so desperate to protect her." He stood, moving closer. "We think," he said quietly, "that you've found Princess Rosalind's daughter." Adrian forced himself to laugh. "You've all lost your minds. She's a servant. Nothing more." "Then prove it," Ashford said. "Tell us where she is. Let us question her ourselves. If she's truly just a servant, she has nothing to fear." Adrian's mind raced. If he refused, they'd know he was protecting something. If he gave up Evelyn's location, they'd kill her. There was no way out, unless he made them think there was no threat at all. "Fine," Adrian said. "She's at St. Catherine's home in Whitechapel. Ask her whatever you want. You'll find she's exactly what she appears to be, a woman with no past trying to survive." Ashford and Cunningham exchanged glances. Edmund Whitmore looked uncertain. "We'll send someone to verify," Ashford said slowly. "If you're telling the truth, we'll drop all charges and leave her alone." "And if I'm lying?" Adrian asked. "Then we'll know you're protecting a threat to the realm," Ashford said. and we'll eliminate both of you." Adrian held his gaze. "I'm not lying." He left the club before they could see his hands shaking, walked 3 blocks before he had to stop and lean against a wall, breathing hard. He'd just gambled Evelyn's life on the hope that she could convincingly play a nobody, that 30 years of hiding had taught her how to be invisible under interrogation. But these men were professionals at extracting truth. They'd broken more experienced liars than Evelyn Hart, and if she slipped, if she revealed anything about her real identity, they'd kill her in that shelter and make it look like an accident. Adrian had to warn her, had to prepare her for what was coming. He ran back to Whitechapel, pounded on St. Catherine's door until the severe woman answered. "I need to see Evelyn Hart," he gasped. "Right now. It's urgent. She's not here." Adrian's heart stopped. "What?" "She left 2 hours ago, said she was going to the docks, looking for work on one of the ships." The docks. Miles of warehouses and ships and 10,000 places to disappear. Or 10,000 places to die if someone came looking. Adrian ran. His lungs burned and his legs screamed, but he kept running, down through Whitechapel's twisted streets toward the Thames. The docks were chaos, laborers hauling cargo, ships loading for departure, the smell of tar and fish and human sweat. He searched for an hour, 2 hours, called her name until his voice gave out, found her finally on a pier near a merchant ship. She was talking to a captain about passage, her few belongings in a small bag. "Evelyn?" Adrian grabbed her arm. "We need to leave, now." She pulled away. "I told you to forget about me." "They know." Adrian's words came out ragged. "The families, the conspirators, they suspect who you are. They're sending people to question you." Evelyn's face went white. "How?" "I made a mistake." Adrian's voice broke. "I tried to protect you, and I made it worse. We need to run, right now." "Where would we run to?" Evelyn asked. Her voice was eerily calm. "They have money, power, connections across England. We'd be hunted forever." "Then we fight them," Adrian said desperately. "We expose the conspiracy, force the Crown to protect you." "The Crown won't protect me." Evelyn looked at him with those sad, ancient eyes. "I told you that. I'm an inconvenience they'd rather erase." Footsteps on the pier behind them. Adrian turned to see 6 men approaching. Professional. Dangerous. The kind of men who solve problems permanently. Lord Ashford had sent them faster than expected. Evelyn saw them too. Her hand found Adrian's, squeezed once. "Run," she whispered. "Not without you." The men were 20 feet away, 15. Evelyn let go of his hand, turned to face them. Her spine straightened, and for just a moment Adrian saw what she might have been, a princess standing before her executioners with dignity intact. "I'm who you're looking for," she said clearly. "Leave him alone." "No," Adrian moved in front of her. "She's nobody, just a servant. I lied to protect her because you love her?" The lead man smiled coldly. "How touching." He drew a pistol. The world slowed down. Adrian saw the gun rise, saw Evelyn's face behind him, resigned and heartbroken, saw the man's finger tighten on the trigger, and made the only choice left. He lunged, the gun fired. Pain exploded in Adrian's shoulder, spinning him sideways. He hit the dock hard, vision blurring. Through the haze, he saw Evelyn scream, saw her drop beside him, hands pressed against the wound, saw the men advancing, saw more guns drawn. Then he saw something else, royal guards, a dozen of them, appearing from the warehouses like ghosts. They surrounded the assassins with military precision, weapons raised. A woman's voice cut through the chaos. "Lower your weapons," by order of Queen Adelaide. Adrian's vision cleared enough to see her, a woman in her 50s, dressed in traveling clothes but carrying herself with unmistakable authority. Lady Pembroke, one of the Queen's most trusted advisors. She knelt beside Evelyn. "Are you hurt, child?" Evelyn stared at her in shock. "How did you—" "We've been watching you for 3 months," Lady Pembroke said gently. "Ever since you appeared at Blackthorn Castle and certain people started asking questions." She looked at Adrian. "And when young Blackthorn here abandoned his estate to protect you, we knew the truth had finally surfaced. The royal guards were dragging the assassins away. One of them shouted threats. Ashford would hear about this. Families would be ruined. Lady Pembroke stood, voice carrying across the docks. Lord Ashford and the other conspirators will be arrested tonight. The Queen has had enough of this 30-year lie. She looked down at Evelyn with something like kindness. You're safe now, Princess. You can stop running. Evelyn shook her head, tears streaming. I'm not a princess. I'm nothing. You're the rightful heir to the Evermont title. Lady Pembroke's voice was firm. Your mother was murdered for political convenience. You were hunted as an infant, but you survived. And the Queen herself has demanded you be restored to your proper station. Adrian tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. His shoulder was on fire. A medic appeared, pressing bandages against the wound. You'll live, Your Grace. The bullet went through. Adrian looked at Evelyn. She was staring at Lady Pembroke like the woman was speaking a foreign language. I don't want a title, Evelyn whispered. I just want to be left alone. That's no longer possible, Lady Pembroke said. Not after tonight. The conspiracy is exposed. The families involved will be prosecuted. You are, whether you want it or not, at the center of the biggest scandal to hit the monarchy in a generation. She gestured to the royal guards. You'll both come with us. You'll be placed under royal protection while we sort this out. Adrian managed to stand, leaning heavily on the medic. What about my mother? Lady Pembroke's expression hardened. Your mother will be questioned about the Blackthorne family's involvement in the original conspiracy. If she's found guilty, she'll face the same consequences as the others. Prison, Adrian said. Or execution. Most likely prison. Lady Pembroke's voice softened slightly. I'm sorry, Your Grace, but justice demands justice. Adrian laughed bitterly. His family had spent decades avoiding it. Now it was finally catching up. He looked at Evelyn, still kneeling on the dock where she'd tried to save him. She looked lost, terrified. Nothing like a princess, and everything like the woman who'd restored books in a forgotten library because she needed something to care about. Will you come? He asked her. Evelyn met his eyes. Do I have a choice? No, Lady Pembroke said, but it will be easier if you cooperate. They were loaded into carriages under heavy guard. Adrian's shoulder throbbed with every movement. Evelyn sat across from him, silent and pale. As the carriage pulled away from the docks, Adrian watched London slide past. Somewhere in this city, his mother was about to be arrested. The families that had ruled England's politics for generations were about to fall. Everything he'd known about power and legacy was burning to ash. And somehow, impossibly, he'd survived. But looking at Evelyn's devastated face, Adrian wasn't sure survival was the same as winning. The carriage rolled through the night toward whatever came next. Trials, scandal, the complete destruction of everything they'd both tried to protect. Behind them, the Thames ran dark and cold, carrying away the last pieces of who they used to be. The royal carriages rolled through London's pre-dawn darkness like funeral processions. Adrian watched the city pass through pain-hazed vision, his shoulder a mass of fire beneath hastily wrapped bandages. Across from him, Evelyn sat rigid and silent, hands folded in her lap like she was praying to God she didn't believe in anymore. Lady Pembroke occupied the third seat, writing notes by lamplight with the methodical efficiency of someone who'd orchestrated coups before breakfast. Where are you taking us? Adrian asked. His voice came out rougher than intended. Kensington Palace. Lady Pembroke didn't look up. The Queen wants to see you both personally before the arrests begin. Evelyn finally spoke. Why now? After 30 years of silence, why does she suddenly care? Because, Lady Pembroke said carefully, the Queen was 7 years old when your mother was murdered. She had no power to stop it then. She has considerable power now. She paused, meeting Evelyn's eyes. And because one of the conspirators made the mistake of trying to kill you on English soil in front of witnesses. That forced her hand. So I'm convenient now, Evelyn said bitterly. A political tool she can use to destroy her enemies. Your leverage, Lady Pembroke corrected. Whether you choose to be a tool is up to you. The palace loomed ahead, all white stone and guarded gates. Adrian had been here twice before. Once for his father's investiture, once for some tedious state function he'd barely survived. Both times he'd felt like an imposter wearing his father's skin. Now he felt like a man walking to his own execution. They were escorted through back corridors to a private chamber. No ceremony, no announcements, just armed guards and the kind of silence that preceded violence. Queen Adelaide entered without fanfare. She was smaller than Adrian expected, barely 5 feet tall, but she carried herself like someone who'd learned early that authority had nothing to do with size. 53 years old, widowed, ruling alone for a decade after her husband's death. She looked at Evelyn for a long moment. "You have your mother's eyes," the Queen said quietly. "I remember them. She used to visit the nursery when I was young. She was kind to me when kindness was rare in this palace." Evelyn said nothing. Her face had gone completely blank. The Queen turned to Adrian. "And you're the Blackthorn boy. Your father was a monster. I assume you know that." "Yes, Your Majesty," Adrian said. "Good. Self-awareness is a start." She moved to a chair but didn't sit. Instead, she gripped its back like she needed something to hold on to. "Tell me everything. How you found her, what you know about the conspiracy. Leave nothing out." Adrian talked. His shoulder throbbed with every word, but he forced it out. The library, the necklace, the portrait, his mother's threats, the flight to London, the trap at the docks. When he finished, the Queen's knuckles were white on the chair. 5 families, she said. 5 of England's most powerful houses conspired to murder a princess and an infant to preserve their political positions. She looked at Lady Pembroke. "Arrest them all. Tonight. Every lord, every heir, every family member who knew. I want them in chains by morning." "Your Majesty," Lady Pembroke said carefully, "that will cause, I don't care what it causes." The Queen's voice was steel. "They murdered my friend. They tried to murder a child. They've had 30 years of comfort and power they didn't deserve. It ends now." She turned back to Evelyn. "I cannot give you back what was taken. Your mother, your childhood, the life you should have lived. But I can give you justice and recognition. The Evermont title will be restored to you, the estates returned. You will be acknowledged as Princess Evelyn Evermont, rightful heir to your mother's legacy." Evelyn's composure finally cracked. "I don't want it." The Queen blinked. "I'm sorry." "The title, the estates, the legacy." Evelyn's voice shook. "I don't want any of it. It killed my mother. It's haunted me my entire life. I just want to be left alone." "You don't have that luxury anymore," the Queen said. "Not after tonight. The moment those families are arrested, your existence becomes public knowledge. You'll be the story everyone talks about. The lost princess who survived." "Then let them talk," Evelyn said. "I'll disappear again. Change my name. Go somewhere they'll never find me. And live like you've been living?" The Queen's voice softened. "Working yourself to death in factories? Hiding from shadows? That's not life. That's slow suicide. It's survival." "No." The Queen stepped closer. "It's what they made you believe survival looks like. But you deserve more than that. Your mother would want more than that." Evelyn looked away, jaw clenched against tears. The Queen sighed. "I'm not asking you to be a princess tomorrow. I'm asking you to let me protect you while we dismantle the people who tried to kill you. After that, you can choose whatever life you want." She glanced at Adrian. "And you, Duke Blackthorn, your mother will be among those arrested. Your family's name will be dragged through every newspaper in England. You'll likely lose your title, your estates, everything your family spent generations building. Do you understand that?" "Yes, Your Majesty. And you're prepared for it?" Adrian thought about his father, about the cruelty that had built the Blackthorn fortune, about servants who flinched and children who learned to lie before they learned to walk. "Yes," he said, "I'm prepared." The Queen studied him. "Then you're either brave or stupid, possibly both." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Lady Pembroke will arrange rooms for you both. You're under royal protection until this is resolved, which means you don't leave the palace without guards. You don't speak to anyone without my permission. And you certainly don't do anything reckless." She looked pointedly at Adrian's shoulder. "More reckless," she amended. After she left, servants appeared to escort them to separate chambers. Adrian caught Evelyn's arm before they could be separated. "Are you all right?" he asked. She laughed without humor. "No." "Are you?" "No." They stood there in the palace corridor, 2 people who'd lost everything except each other, and even that felt precarious. "Thank you," Evelyn said quietly, "for trying to protect me, even when it was stupid." "Especially when it was stupid," Adrian said. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Then it was gone, and servants were pulling them in different directions. Adrian's chamber was obscenely luxurious, silk sheets, gilded furniture, the kind of excess that made his teeth ache. A physician appeared to properly treat his shoulder, cleaning and stitching the wound with ruthless efficiency. "You're lucky," the man said. "Another inch to the left and it would have hit the artery." Adrian didn't feel lucky. He felt hollowed out. Everything he'd known for 28 years was about to burn, and he'd lit the match himself. He couldn't sleep, paced the room instead, watching dawn break over London through leaded glass windows. Somewhere out there, royal guards were kicking down doors, dragging lords from their beds, shattering the comfortable lie that had held England's aristocracy together for 3 decades. And somewhere in this palace, Evelyn was probably doing the same thing, pacing, sleepless, wondering how her life had spiraled so completely out of control. Adrian found himself at her door before he'd consciously decided to go there, knocked softly. She opened it immediately, like she'd been waiting. "I couldn't sleep either," she said. "Can I come in?" "You probably shouldn't." Adrian came in anyway, closed the door behind him. Evelyn's room mirrored his, expensive, impersonal, designed to impress rather than comfort. She'd pushed the furniture against the walls like she was preparing for a fight. "They're arresting them right now," she said. "All of them. Because of me." "Because of what they did," Adrian corrected. "You didn't kill your mother. You didn't try to murder an infant. They did. And now families will be destroyed. Children will lose their fathers. Estates will be seized. Good," Adrian said. "Let them feel what you felt." Evelyn turned to face him. "You don't mean that?" "Yes, I do." Adrian moved closer. "These people built their power on murder. They've been comfortable for 30 years while you lived in constant fear. If they suffer now, it's justice, not cruelty." "Justice and cruelty look the same from certain angles," Evelyn said softly. "Then I'll learn to live with the ambiguity." They stood close enough that Adrian could see the exhaustion bruising the skin under her eyes, could see the tension in her jaw, the way she held herself like she might shatter. "You saved my life tonight," she said. "On the docks. You stepped in front of a gun for me." "Yes." "Why?" "Because the alternative was watching you die." Adrian's throat tightened. "And I've watched enough people I care about get destroyed by this world. I wasn't going to watch it happen to you." Evelyn's composure finally broke. She leaned forward and Adrian caught her, his wounded shoulder screaming protest. She didn't cry, just stood there shaking while he held her together. "I don't know how to be a princess," she whispered against his chest. "I don't know how to be anything except afraid." "Then we'll figure it out together," Adrian said. "Being afraid and being broken. You're a duke. You're not broken." Adrian laughed bitterly. "I'm the son of a murderer and the pawn of a woman who only loves power. I've spent my entire life performing a role I hate. If that's not broken, I don't know what is." Evelyn pulled back enough to look at him. "What will you do? After this? When they take everything from you?" "I don't know," Adrian admitted. "Maybe I'll open a bookshop, restore old manuscripts, live quietly somewhere people don't know my name. A bookshop? Why not? I'm qualified. I have excellent references from a talented restoration specialist." Despite everything, Evelyn smiled. She'd hire you in a heartbeat. The moment hung between them, fragile and precious and probably doomed. Adrian knew he should leave, knew that whatever this was between them couldn't survive the chaos coming. But he was so tired of doing what he should do. He kissed her instead. Evelyn made a small sound of surprise, then kissed him back with the desperation of someone who'd forgotten what hope felt like. It wasn't gentle, wasn't romantic. It was two broken people trying to find something solid in a world that kept shifting under their feet. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Evelyn touched his face. "This is a terrible idea," she said. "Everything I've done for the past month has been a terrible idea," Adrian said. "At least this one feels right." They stood there in the pre-dawn light, holding on to each other while the world burned outside. A knock shattered the moment. Lady Pembroke's voice through the door. "Your Grace, Miss Hart, the Queen requests your presence immediately." Adrian and Evelyn separated, tried to look like they hadn't just been kissing in a royal bedchamber while aristocrats got arrested across London. Lady Pembroke took one look at them and raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She led them through the palace to a war room where the queen stood over a table covered in documents and arrest warrants. "It's done," the queen said without preamble. "All 5 family heads are in custody, their immediate heirs as well. We're searching their estates for evidence now." She looked up, eyes hard. "But we have a problem." Adrian's stomach dropped. "What problem?" "Your mother," Lady Pembroke said. "She's disappeared." The room went cold. "What do you mean, disappeared?" Adrian demanded. "You had guards watching the estate." "We did." Lady Pembroke gestured to a report. "They found Blackthorn Castle empty, every servant gone, your mother's personal effects removed. She vanished sometime between midnight and dawn." "Where would she go?" the queen asked. Adrian's mind raced. His mother never ran, never showed weakness. If she'd fled, it was because she had a plan. "She has allies," he said slowly. "People not part of the original conspiracy, but loyal to the families involved. She'll go to them." "To do what?" Evelyn asked. "To finish what was started 30 years ago," Adrian said. His blood ran cold. "She knows you're the real threat now. Public, protected by the crown. The only way to destroy you is to kill me before the trials," Evelyn finished. "Make it look like an accident or suicide. Remove the primary witness." The queen slammed her hand on the table. "Then we find her first. Lady Pembroke, mobilize every resource. I want the Dowager Duchess Blackthorn in chains by sunset." "Your Majesty," a guard interrupted from the doorway, "we have a situation." "Another one?" The queen's voice was ice. The guard hesitated. "Someone's delivered a message." "For Duke Blackthorn." They said it was urgent. He held out a sealed letter. Adrian took it with shaking hands, broke the seal, read words that made his vision blur, his mother's handwriting. Neat and precise. "Dearest Adrian, by now you understand the choice you've forced me to make. You chose that girl over your family, over your legacy, over everything your father and I built. I cannot allow her to destroy us. If you want her to live, come to Blackthorn Castle, alone, before noon. Bring the royal guards and she dies anyway. I have people watching who will ensure it. Come alone and perhaps we can still salvage something from this disaster. Your loving mother." Adrian's hands crumpled the paper. "It's a trap," Evelyn said. "Obviously it's a trap." "Yes," Adrian said, "but she means it. If I don't go, she'll kill you anyway. She has the connections, the resources. She'll wait a month, a year, however long it takes, and she'll make it happen." "Then we increase protection," the queen said. "Lock down the palace. She can't reach you here." "You don't know her like I do," Adrian said. His voice was hollow. "She's patient, methodical. She'll find a way." "So what are you suggesting?" Lady Pembroke demanded. "I'm going," Adrian said. "Absolutely not," the queen snapped. "She's right." Evelyn grabbed his arm. "You can't. She'll kill you." "Probably," Adrian agreed. "But if I don't go, she'll definitely kill you. And I didn't survive getting shot to watch you die now." He looked at the queen. "Give me 12 hours. I'll confront her, get her to confess. If I'm not back by midnight, send your guards." "This is suicide," Lady Pembroke said. Adrian smiled without humor. "Then it runs in the family." He turned to leave, but Evelyn blocked his path. "No," she said. Her voice shook. "You don't get to sacrifice yourself for me. I won't let you. You don't have a choice." "Yes, I do. I'll go with you." Adrian grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. My mother is a monster. She's calculated and cruel, and she will absolutely kill you if she gets the chance. The only reason she wants me there is to break me before she finishes this." "Then we'll both go," Evelyn insisted. "We'll face her together." "And both die together?" Adrian shook his head. "No, you stay here. You survive. You become the princess your mother wanted you to be." "I don't want to be a princess," Evelyn said desperately. "I want—" She stopped. Couldn't say it. Adrian said it for her, I know. But we don't get what we want. We get what we can protect. He kissed her forehead. Gentle this time. Like goodbye. "If I don't come back," he said quietly, "find that bookshop anyway. Restore beautiful things. Live the life you deserve." He pulled away before she could argue. Walked out of the war room with his heart hammering and his shoulders screaming and the certainty that he was about to do the stupidest thing he'd ever done. But men who have nothing left to lose stop calculating odds. They stop weighing consequences. They just moved forward into the fire and hoped they burned bright enough to matter. Adrian commandeered a horse from the royal stables, rode out of London as the city woke to news of the arrests. By the time he reached the northern road, the scandal was spreading like plague. Nobles in chains, families destroyed, 30 years of lies unraveling. His mother had built her life on those lies. She wouldn't let them fall without a fight. The ride took 6 hours. Adrian's shoulder reopened halfway through, blood soaking through the bandages. He didn't stop, just kept riding through the pain, through the exhaustion, through the voice in his head screaming that this was insane. Blackthorn Castle appeared on the horizon like a gravestone, dark and silent. No smoke from the chimneys, no movement in the yards. Adrian dismounted in the courtyard. The castle door stood open. He walked inside. The entrance hall was empty. Dust motes drifted through weak afternoon light. His footsteps echoed on marble floors. "Mother," he called. His voice echoed back. No answer. He climbed the main staircase, each step deliberate. His hand found the pistol he'd taken from the palace guard's armory. Not that it would help much if she'd brought reinforcements. He found her in the portrait gallery. She stood before the painting of his father, dressed in black like she was already in mourning. She didn't turn when he entered. "I wondered if you'd come," she said. "If you'd choose her over survival." "I chose right over wrong," Adrian said, "for the first time in my miserable life." His mother finally turned. She looked older than he remembered, thinner. The iron control that had defined her was fracturing at the edges. "Right and wrong," she said. "Such simple concepts for such a complicated world." "Murder is pretty straightforward," Adrian said. "You killed an innocent woman, tried to kill her daughter, spent 30 years covering it up. There's no complexity there, just evil." His mother smiled, still so naive. "That innocent woman you're defending was a threat to England's stability. Her claim to the throne was stronger than the current line. If she'd lived, it would have sparked civil war. So you decided for everyone. Someone had to." His mother moved closer. "That's what power means, Adrian. Making the choices no one else has the courage to make. Your father understood that. I understand it. You never did. Because I'm not a monster." "No," his mother said. "You're weak. Just like I always feared." She pulled a pistol from her dress pocket. Adrian's gun was already raised. They stood 10 feet apart, weapons aimed, all pretense finally stripped away. "You won't shoot me," his mother said. "You don't have it in you. Try me." His mother's smile widened. "There's my boy," finally showing some spine. She shifted her aim slightly, not at Adrian. At the gallery's entrance where Evelyn stood, pale and defiant, a royal guard sword in her shaking hands. Adrian's heart stopped. "I told you to stay at the palace," he said without looking away from his mother. "And I told you I wouldn't let you die alone," Evelyn said. His mother laughed. "How touching." "The servant girl playing hero." "Princess," Evelyn corrected. Her voice was steady despite the fear Adrian could hear underneath. "My name is Princess Eveline Evermont, daughter of Princess Rosalind, the woman you murdered." "You should have stayed dead," Adrian's mother said. "I tried." Evelyn took a step forward. "I spent 30 years trying, hiding, running, pretending I was nobody. But you couldn't leave it alone. You had to keep hunting. And now everyone knows what you did." "They know nothing that matters," his mother spat. "They know stories, accusations, but without proof, without a witness willing to testify, it's just scandal. And scandals fade." "I'll testify," Evelyn said, "in front of the entire realm. I'll tell them everything." "Then you'll die," Adrian's mother said simply. "Tonight, tomorrow, eventually. I'll make sure of it." Her finger tightened on the trigger. Adrian fired first. The shot cracked through the gallery like thunder. His mother stumbled back, hand flying to her shoulder where blood bloomed through black silk. Her pistol clattered to the floor. She looked at him with genuine shock. "You shot me," she said. Her voice sounded almost impressed. Adrian's hands shook, but his aim didn't waver. "And I'll shoot you again if you move," his mother laughed through the pain. "There he is, the killer I always knew you could be." Royal guards poured into the gallery, Lady Pembroke behind them. The Queen herself appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with cold assessment. Adrian lowered his gun. Let them arrest his mother. Let them drag her away, still laughing that terrible laugh. Eveline crossed to him, took the pistol from his shaking hands. "It's over," she said quietly. Adrian looked at her. At the woman who'd survived 30 years of hunting, who'd faced down aristocrats and assassins, who'd chosen to stand beside him even when it meant walking into the fire. "No," he said. His voice was raw. "It's just beginning. Because some endings are really just the moment when you stop running and start fighting back. When you look at the monsters who raised you and choose to become something else entirely. When you burn everything down and dare to believe you might build something better in the ashes." The Queen's guards surrounded his mother. More guards secured the castle. The machinery of justice ground forward with inexorable force, and in the portrait gallery where his ancestors had stared down in judgment for generations, Adrian Blackthorne finally stopped caring what they thought. The trials began 3 weeks later in the House of Lords, transformed into a courtroom where England's most powerful families would answer for sins committed in darkness 30 years prior. Adrian sat in the gallery watching his mother stand before her peers in chains, and felt nothing except a hollow kind of relief that it was finally ending. She didn't look at him once during the proceedings, kept her eyes fixed on some point above the judge's head, spine straight, face composed. Even in disgrace, she refused to bend. Adrian supposed he should admire that kind of defiance, but mostly it just made him tired. There was something exhausting about watching someone fight so hard to preserve a lie that everyone already knew was poisoned. The evidence was damning and methodical. Letters detailing the conspiracy, financial records showing payments to assassins, testimony from servants who'd been too afraid to speak for 3 decades but found courage when the crown promised protection. Each piece of proof hammered another nail into the coffin of the 5 families who'd built their empires on Princess Rosalind's corpse. Eveline testified on the 3rd day. She wore a simple gray dress, refused the royal wardrobe the Queen had offered, and spoke in a voice that didn't shake even when describing how she'd learned at 16 that her entire identity was a lie constructed to keep her alive. How the couple who raised her had loved her fiercely and died suddenly, leaving her with nothing but a silver necklace and whispered warnings to never trust aristocrats. Adrian watched the lords and ladies in attendance, saw them lean forward when Eveline spoke, saw the women dab at their eyes, saw the men shift uncomfortably in their seats when she described scrubbing floors at Blackthorne Castle, invisible to the very people who'd tried to murder her as an infant. She was extraordinary, and she absolutely hated every second of it. After she finished, she walked past Adrian without looking at him. He understood. She'd asked him not to come to the trials, said watching his mother get destroyed would only poison whatever fragile thing existed between them. But Adrian couldn't stay away. Needed to see it through, needed to witness the final unraveling of everything his family had built. The verdicts came on the 10th day. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder. Treason against the crown. Obstruction of royal succession. The words echoed through the chamber like a death knell. His mother stood perfectly still as they read her sentence. Life imprisonment in the Tower. All Blackthorne holdings seized by the crown. The family name officially disgraced, struck from the rolls of nobility. Adrian Blackthorne was no longer a duke. He was just Adrian. Nobody. Less than nobody. And he'd never felt more free in his entire life. The chamber emptied slowly after the sentencing. Adrian sat alone in the gallery until a guard came to tell him he needed to leave. He walked out into grey London afternoon and realized he had nowhere to go. The Blackthorne townhouse had been seized along with everything else. He had the clothes on his back and 40 pounds in his pocket and absolutely no plan for what came next. It felt like waking up after a long fever. He found a boarding house in Clerkenwell, paid for a week in advance, and slept for 16 hours straight. When he finally woke, his shoulder had stopped aching for the first time since he'd been shot. The scar tissue was thick and ugly, but the wound had closed clean. He took it as a sign that some things could heal if you gave them enough time and stopped picking at them. The next morning, he went looking for Eveline. She wasn't at Kensington Palace. The guards told him she'd left the day after testifying, refused the Queen's offer of permanent residence, and disappeared into the city. No forwarding address, no message. Adrian spent 2 days searching before he found her at St. Catherine's in Whitechapel. Not living there this time, teaching. He watched through a window as she led a room full of young women through reading lessons, her patience infinite even when they struggled with words that had never been meant for people like them. She looked up and saw him standing there. Her expression flickered through surprise and something else, maybe relief, maybe regret, before settling into careful neutrality. She came outside during the break between lessons. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I needed to see you," Adrian said. "Make sure you were all right." "I'm fine. You're teaching in a shelter in Whitechapel when you could be living in a palace." Evelyn smiled without humor. "The palace was a cage with better furniture. At least here I'm useful." They stood in the narrow street while London churned around them. Cartwheels on cobblestones, vendors calling their wares, the mechanical noise of a city that didn't care about fallen dukes or lost princesses. "The Queen wants you to take the Evermont title," Adrian said. "I heard her advisors discussing it." "I know." Evelyn looked at her hands. "She sends letters every week. Very polite, very insistent." And I keep saying no." Evelyn met his eyes. "I don't want to be a princess, Adrian. I never did. That title got my mother killed. I'm not interested in repeating her mistakes. So what do you want?" Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. "I want to teach girls who remind me of myself, who've been told they're worthless their entire lives. I want to show them they're not." She paused. "And I want to stop feeling like I'm waiting for the next disaster. Like happiness is something that will be taken away the moment I reach for it." Adrian understood that down to his bones. He'd spent 28 years waiting for his father's temper to explode, his mother's manipulation to tighten, the whole fragile structure of his life to collapse. And now that it finally had, he was still bracing for impact. "Maybe that's the real damage they did to us," he said quietly. "Not the physical threats or the actual danger, just making us believe we don't deserve peace." Evelyn looked at him with those sad, ancient eyes. "Do you feel peaceful now? After everything?" "No," Adrian admitted. "I feel untethered, like I've been cut loose from an anchor that was drowning me, and now I'm just drifting. No title, no estate, no idea who I'm supposed to be without all that weight. Maybe that's the point." Evelyn's voice was gentle. "Maybe we're supposed to figure out who we are when we're not performing for monsters." A bell rang inside the shelter. Evelyn glanced back. "I have to finish the lessons," she said, but she hesitated, something vulnerable crossing her face. "There's a coffee house 2 streets over, if you wanted to wait. We could talk more after." Adrian felt something loosen in his chest. "I'll wait." He spent the next 2 hours in the coffee house watching rain streak the windows and trying to imagine a future that didn't involve castles or conspiracies or carrying his family's sins. It felt impossible and terrifying, and maybe just slightly hopeful. Evelyn appeared as the rain was stopping. She'd changed out of her teaching clothes into something simpler. Her hair was down. She looked younger, less hunted. They ordered coffee, neither of them touched, and talked about nothing important. Books they'd read, places they'd never been. Small observations about the city that felt enormous because they were sharing them. It was the first conversation they'd had that wasn't shadowed by danger or secrets, and Adrian realized halfway through that he was happy. Actually, genuinely happy, for the first time he could remember. "The Queen offered me a position," he said eventually. "Administrative work, managing estates she's seized from the convicted families. Good salary. Respectable." "Are you going to take it?" Evelyn asked. "No." Adrian smiled. "I told her I was opening a bookshop." Evelyn's eyes widened. "You were serious about that?" "Completely. I found a space in Bloomsbury. Small, affordable. Previous tenant was a printer who went bankrupt. It needs work, but the light is good." "A bookshop," Evelyn said wonderingly. "What will you sell?" "Everything." Adrian leaned forward. "History, philosophy, novels, rare manuscripts. I'll do restoration work too. Build a reputation. Maybe eventually I'll even make enough to live on." "It sounds wonderful," Evelyn said softly. "Come see it," Adrian said. "Help me plan the layout. You're better at this than I am." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. "This feels dangerous." "What does?" "This. Us. You asking me to help with your bookshop. Me wanting to say yes. It feels like hoping for something. Is that so terrible?" "Yes," Evelyn said. "Because every time I've hoped for something, it's been taken away." Adrian reached across the table, took her hand carefully, giving her every opportunity to pull back. She didn't. "Then maybe it's time to practice hoping anyway," he said. "Not because we're guaranteed it will work out, but because refusing to hope is just another way of letting them win. Eveline's fingers tightened on his. Who are you, and what have you done with the cynical Duke I met in that library? He got shot and lost everything and decided he was tired of being miserable, Adrian said. Turns out hitting rock bottom is surprisingly liberating. They sat there in the coffee house as afternoon faded to evening, hands linked across a scarred wooden table, and made plans that felt absurd and fragile and absolutely necessary. The bookshop would need shelves built, inventory acquired, a name that didn't sound pretentious. Evelyn suggested the Phoenix and Adrian countered with the Lost Library, and they settled on Evermont and Blackthorn because it felt like claiming something that had been taken from both of them. Walking back through twilight London afterward, Adrian felt the weight of the past 3 months finally start to lift. His mother was imprisoned, the conspiracy exposed. The families who'd murdered a princess were being systematically destroyed by the same legal system they'd manipulated for decades. Justice had arrived slow and brutal, but it had arrived. The bookshop took 4 months to open. Adrian did most of the physical work himself, building shelves, repairing the floor, replacing windows that had been broken for years. His shoulder protested every hammer swing, but he welcomed the pain. It felt like penance and rebirth happening simultaneously. Eveline came by every afternoon after finishing at the shelter. She organized the inventory Adrian acquired from estate sales and desperate nobles liquidating their libraries. She had an eye for what was valuable and what was merely expensive, could spot a first edition from across a room, and knew which manuscripts were worth restoring and which were better left to decay. They didn't talk about what was happening between them, didn't label it or examine it too closely, just existed in the same space, building something together, and let that be enough. The Queen visited 3 weeks before the opening, arrived in an unmarked carriage with minimal guard, and looked around the half-finished shop with genuine interest. Quite a change from Blackthorn Castle, she observed. Better light, Adrian said. Less murder. The Queen smiled. I wanted to extend another invitation. The Evermont estates have been cleared of the conspirators who seized them after your mother's death. They're legally yours now, Miss Hart. The title, the lands, everything. Evelyn was cataloging books in the corner. She didn't look up. I appreciate the offer, Your Majesty, but my answer hasn't changed. You could do tremendous good with that wealth, the Queen pressed. Found schools, support charities, use your position to help people who need it. I can do that without the title, Evelyn said, and without becoming a target again. The Queen sighed. You're as stubborn as your mother was. I'll take that as a compliment. After the Queen left, Adrian found Evelyn staring at the inventory list without seeing it. Do you regret it? He asked. Turning down everything she's offering? Every day, Evelyn admitted. Then I wake up the next morning and feel relieved I said no. She looked at him. Does that make me a coward? It makes you human, Adrian said, and smart enough to know that some cages are just better decorated than others. The shop opened on a cold November morning. Adrian had invited no one, placed no advertisements, simply unlocked the door, and waited to see if anyone would come. They came. First a few scholars from the university looking for obscure texts, then collectors interested in the restoration services, then ordinary people who just wanted somewhere quiet to browse without being treated like they didn't belong. By the end of the first week, Adrian had sold enough to cover next month's rent. By the end of the first month, he'd hired 2 assistants and Evelyn had started teaching evening classes in the back room. It wasn't the life either of them had been born to, but it was the life they were building, and that made it precious. 6 months after opening, Adrian was closing up late when Evelyn appeared at the door. She'd been staying at a women's boarding house near the shelter, maintaining the careful distance they'd both been honoring. But tonight she looked different, uncertain and determined at once. Can we talk? She asked. Adrian let her in, locked the door behind them. They sat in the reading corner where lamplight made everything look softer than the harsh London night outside. I've been offered a position, Evelyn said, running a new school for girls. The Queen is funding it. She wants me to oversee the whole operation. Curriculum, hiring, everything. That's incredible, Adrian said. When do you start? Evelyn twisted her hands together. That's what I wanted to talk about. The school is in Yorkshire, 3 hours north. I'd have to relocate. Adrian's chest tightened, but he forced his voice steady. You should take it. I don't want to leave, Evelyn said quietly. The shelter, the teaching here, this... She gestured at the shop, at him, at the fragile routine they'd built. But it's the opportunity I've been wanting, to build something that lasts, to help girls who won't get chances otherwise. Then you have to go, Adrian said. You'd regret not taking it. Would you come with me? The question hung in the air between them. Adrian thought about the bookshop, barely a year old, finally starting to thrive. Thought about leaving London, where he'd spent his entire life. Thought about following Evelyn to Yorkshire and what that would mean. Thought about what it had cost to find someone who made him want to hope for a future at all. Yes, he said, I'd come with you. Eveline's eyes filled with tears. You'd give up everything you've built here? I'd be giving it up for something better, Adrian said. And I've learned that the things worth having are usually the things that scare you most. He stood, crossed to her chair, knelt so they were eye level. I love you, he said. I've loved you since you were restoring books in that abandoned library and trying so hard to be invisible. I loved you when you were terrified and running. I loved you when you faced down my mother with a sword you barely knew how to hold. And I'll love you in Yorkshire or London or anywhere else you decide to go. Evelyn touched his face, fingers gentle on the scar that ran along his jaw from where he'd hit the dock when he was shot. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. How to let someone matter this much. How to trust that you won't disappear. Then we'll learn together, Adrian said. Make mistakes. Figure it out as we go. I'm pretty sure that's what everyone does. Evelyn kissed him then, soft and desperate and full of all the things they'd been too afraid to say for a year. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, she was smiling through tears. Yorkshire then, she said. We'll build a school and a bookshop and something that actually matters. They moved north in the spring, closed the London shop with plans to reopen a smaller version once they were settled. The Queen provided a building for the school, an old manor house that had been seized from one of the convicted families, now converted into classrooms and dormitories. Evelyn threw herself into the work with the intensity of someone making up for lost time. She hired teachers who understood what it meant to be underestimated, developed a curriculum that taught practical skills alongside literature and mathematics, created a space where girls could learn to be more than what society expected. Adrian opened his bookshop in the village nearby, smaller than the London location but perfectly formed. He spent his days restoring manuscripts and his evenings helping Evelyn with administrative work she hated. They built a life that was quiet and purposeful and nothing like what either of them had been born to. On their wedding day, a year and a half after moving to Yorkshire, it rained. Not the gentle English mist, but a downpour that turned the roads to mud and made the small church feel like a ship in a storm. Evelyn wore a simple dress the color of winter sky. Adrian wore a suit he'd bought from a tailor in the village who didn't know or care that he used to be a duke. The ceremony was small. The Queen attended, looking satisfied that her maneuvering had finally paid off. Margaret Thorne came, the midwife who'd kept Evelyn's secret for 3 decades and wept through the entire service. A dozen teachers from the school, students who'd learned to read in Evelyn's classes. The bookseller from the next village over who'd helped Adrian source inventory. No aristocrats, no grand families. No one who cared about titles or bloodlines or the weight of legacy. When Adrian kissed his wife for the first time, he tasted rain and hope and the specific joy of surviving something that should have killed you. They left the church to applause and walked through the downpour to the reception, and Adrian realized he was laughing. Actually laughing, like a man who'd forgotten how and just remembered. That night, alone in the cottage they'd bought overlooking the valley, Evelyn stood at the window watching lightning illuminate the hills. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The castle. The power. Being someone important. Adrian came to stand behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. I was never important, he said. I was just wealthy. There's a difference. But still, the life you gave up was killing me, Adrian finished, slowly, methodically. Every day I stayed in that castle, I became more like my father, more like my mother. If I'd married Celestine and kept the title, I'd have ended up exactly like them. He turned her to face him. This life, he said, with you, building things that matter, helping people who need it. This is the first time I've ever felt like the person I am matches the person I want to be. Evelyn smiled, soft and genuine. Who knew getting shot and losing everything would be the best thing that ever happened to you? Who knew? Adrian agreed. They stood at the window watching the storm rage and subside, watched the clouds break to reveal stars scattered across Yorkshire darkness. In the morning, they'd wake up and return to work, Evelyn to her students, Adrian to his books. They'd build and teach and restore things people had forgotten were valuable. Some days would be hard. Some nights, Evelyn would wake from nightmares about men with guns. Some mornings, Adrian would see his mother's face in the mirror and have to remind himself he'd chosen differently. The damage done to them in childhood didn't just disappear because they wanted it to, but they'd learned that healing wasn't about erasing the scars. It was about deciding the scars didn't get to write the ending. 3 years after the wedding, Evelyn's school had expanded to 3 buildings and was turning away applicants. The bookshop had become a destination for collectors across England. They'd bought the cottage outright and started talking about children in that careful way people do when hope still feels dangerous. Adrian stood in his shop one afternoon repairing a 14th century manuscript someone had nearly destroyed through neglect, when he heard familiar footsteps. He looked up to find his mother standing in the doorway. She'd aged a decade in 3 years. Prison had hollowed her out, carved lines into her face that no amount of iron will could erase, but her eyes were still sharp, still calculating. Adrian set down his tools slowly. "How did you get out?" he asked. "Early release for good behavior," his mother said. "The Queen is feeling generous with certain prisoners, trying to heal the nation's wounds." She looked around the shop with barely concealed contempt. "This is what you've built? A provincial bookshop?" "Yes," Adrian said. His mother moved closer. "I came to offer you a chance to return home. The Crown is restoring some holdings to families who cooperate with reforms. We could rebuild. Not what we were, but something." "No," Adrian said. His mother's jaw clenched. "Don't be stupid. You're wasting yourself here." "I'm building a life here," Adrian corrected. "There's a difference with her." His mother spat the word like poison. "The girl who destroyed everything. The girl I love," Adrian said. "My wife. And you'll speak about her with respect or leave." His mother stared at him. For the first time in his life, Adrian saw something that might have been recognition in her eyes. Not approval, not affection, but acknowledgement that he'd become someone she no longer controlled. "You've changed," she said finally. "Yes," Adrian said. "I have." His mother turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Your father would be ashamed of you." "Good," Adrian said. "I'd be ashamed if he wasn't." She left without another word. Adrian watched her disappear into the Yorkshire afternoon and felt nothing except relief that the conversation was over. That evening, he told Evelyn about the visit. They sat in the cottage garden watching sunset paint the hills gold and crimson. "Do you think she'll come back?" Evelyn asked. "Probably not," Adrian said. "She got what she came for, the chance to see if I'd break. And you didn't." "No." He took Evelyn's hand. "I've learned that the people who tried to break us only have the power we give them, and I'm done giving them anything." Evelyn leaned against his shoulder. They sat in comfortable silence while darkness crept across the valley. Inside the cottage, lamplight glowed warm and welcoming, the school visible on the hill beyond, the village nestled in the valley below. It wasn't a castle, wasn't power or prestige or anything the world would call important, but it was theirs. Built from the ruins of everything they'd lost, forged in fire and desperation and the stubborn refusal to let cruelty have the final word. 5 years after opening the school, Evelyn stood before 200 students at the annual assembly and told them the truth, that she'd been born a princess and raised in poverty, that she'd survived assassination attempts and aristocratic conspiracies, that she'd been a servant and a fugitive and absolutely terrified for most of her life, and that none of it mattered as much as the choice to keep moving forward. The students listened with rapt attention. These girls who'd been told they were worthless, who'd been denied education and opportunity because of their birth. They saw themselves in Evelyn's story, saw that survival was possible, that transformation was real. After the assembly, Adrian waited outside. Evelyn emerged exhausted and exhilarated, and he pulled her close. "You're extraordinary," he said. "I'm terrified," she corrected, "every single time I speak publicly." "Then you're extraordinarily brave," Adrian said. "There's a difference." They walked home through Yorkshire twilight. Past the bookshop, Adrian had expanded twice. Past the cottage they'd renovated. past the lives they'd built from nothing except determination and love, and the specific courage it takes to believe you deserve happiness. That night, in their bedroom overlooking the valley, Evelyn told Adrian she was pregnant. He stared at her, speechless, until she laughed. "Say something," she said. Adrian pulled her close, felt tears he didn't bother hiding. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "Good," Evelyn said. "Me too. But we'll figure it out." Like we figured out everything else? Exactly like that. Their daughter was born in spring, screaming and perfect, and absolutely uninterested in anyone's expectations. They named her Rosaline, for Evelyn's mother, for the woman whose murder had set this entire story in motion. Holding his daughter for the first time, Adrian understood something his own father never had. That legacy wasn't about wealth or titles or the fear you inspired. It was about the people you loved enough to become better for. He looked at Evelyn, exhausted and radiant in the hospital bed, and saw their future stretching ahead. Difficult sometimes, uncertain often, but fundamentally good in a way that had nothing to do with power and everything to do with choice. They'd chosen each other, chosen healing, chosen to build instead of destroy. And that made all the difference. 20 years later, Adrian stood in his bookshop watching his daughter shelve inventory. She was 17, sharp-minded and idealistic, planning to study law at university. She knew the full story of her parents' past, knew about the conspiracy and the trials and the violence that had brought them together. She'd asked once if they ever regretted how it happened. Every day, Evelyn had told her honestly. And then we wake up and choose to be grateful anyway. Their daughter had inherited her mother's resilience and her father's quiet intensity. She was everything they could have hoped for, and nothing like what either of them had been at 17. She was free in a way they'd had to fight for. Evelyn appeared in the shop doorway, gray threading through her dark hair, lines around her eyes from years of smiling. The school had grown beyond anything they'd imagined. Hundreds of graduates doing extraordinary things. Several had gone into politics, pushing for reforms that would have been unthinkable 30 years ago. "Ready?" she asked Adrian. He locked up the shop and they walked home together through the village that had become theirs. Past neighbors who waved and shopkeepers who knew their names. Past the school on the hill where lights burned late because some student was studying past curfew. Past the life they'd built from ashes and determination and love that refused to be destroyed. In the cottage that night, Adrian held Evelyn close and thought about the scared man he'd been in that library, the duke who hated his inheritance, the boy who'd never learned how to be loved. He was gone now, replaced by someone quieter, happier, free from the weight of names and titles and the sins of fathers. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd made different choices?" Evelyn asked drowsily. "All the time," Adrian admitted, "but I can't imagine any version where I'd be more grateful than I am right now. Even with everything we lost? Especially because of everything we lost." He kissed her forehead. "We had to lose the wrong things before we could build the right ones." Evelyn fell asleep in his arms. Adrian stayed awake a while longer, listening to her breathe, feeling their daughter asleep down the hall, surrounded by the quiet peace of a life earned through surviving the unsurvivable. Outside, Yorkshire darkness settled soft over the valley. In London, the Queen governed a realm still healing from old wounds. At the Tower, cells held the remnants of families who'd built empires on murder. In courtrooms and parliaments, laws were being rewritten by people who remembered that power without accountability was just another word for tyranny. The world was changing, slowly, imperfectly, but changing nonetheless. And in a cottage overlooking Yorkshire hills, two people who should have been destroyed by that world slept peacefully, holding each other, holding on to hope, proving that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to become what tried to break you, that sometimes survival is enough, and that love, real love, the kind built on shared scars and impossible choices, is the only legacy that actually matters. Adrian closed his eyes and slept without nightmares for the first time in his life. The morning would bring new students to teach and old books to restore, would bring his daughter's laughter and his wife's steady presence, would bring ordinary miracles that felt extraordinary because they'd fought so hard to reach them. But tonight, there was just this: peace, hard-won and precious and absolutely real. The Duke's shadow had finally lifted, And in its place stood a man who'd learned that the only power worth having was the power to choose who you became when everything else was taken away.